Thousands of hematologists are embracing meaningful connections and learning about transformative research at the ASH Annual Meeting and Exposition. Highlights from some of those experiences are coming up. You're watching ASH News TV. Inspiring, recruiting, and supporting researchers and clinicians from diverse backgrounds is at the heart of the long-standing commitment ASH has made to help combat inequities in both the hematology workforce and in patient care. Part of that mission is reflected in the ASH Health Equity Studio, a dedicated place for important conversations that shape the future for those underrepresented in medicine across patient and healthcare communities.
This is a great year for ASH and its Health Equity Studio. I've been impressed how the topics have grown over time. This year, we're going to see topics on systemic racism. We're also going to learn about using community partnerships to advance healthcare equity. And then one of the things I'm looking forward to is looking at outcome disparities and the social determinants of health and how that interacts together. Some of the examples of the topic of community partnerships and how they advance healthcare equity include ASH itself. Its research collaborative has put front and center the Community Advisory Board program, which is supposed to help elevate the patient voice as well as determine the research priorities from the community perspective. And this helps them work in tandem as part of the team in getting better clinical trials, and in this case for sickle cell disease. In my personal experiences with sickle cell disease, both as a pediatric hematologist as well as a person living with the disease, there are several challenges that face the sickle cell disease community. One is they don't feel seen. Sickle cell disease basically sits at an intersection of two disparate groups. One is the group of being a rare disease. It's really difficult when you've never met somebody who's had your disease before, or you go to hospitals or receive care from places that don't seem to understand your disease. Then the other space that's more of a historical burden is the fact that sickle cell predominantly affects ethnic minorities. And so the disparities that we see reflected on every level for an ethnic minority in the United States is also reflected in the sickle cell disease space. And so battling those two makes the burden very great indeed. And I'm very proud that ASH has stepped up over several years now to give light to this disease and to show the magnitude of the problem.
The discussions around diversity, equity, and inclusion are not confined to the Health Equity Studio. Attendees are defining goals and learning about a new toolkit for enhancing DEI efforts in clinical trials and hematology during scientific workshops too.
Why am I involved in DEI? And it's very personal. So it's mainly because I'm a dad. And I adopted two black boys when they were very young, and also had two white children. So I raised a mixed race family, and from doing that, I saw very clearly the effects of racism in the United States society. For our family, it's tragic, and I just want to try sort of in honor of my children. I want to come and do things that I can. What we want to do is we don't want to just identify barriers. We want to have solutions for the problem. And one of the things that's come out of the ASH Subcommittee on Clinical Trial Design and this ASH Roadmap on Diversity, Equity, Inclusion in Clinical Trials has been a toolkit that's available online on the ASH website. When you're designing a clinical trial, it gives you concepts and ways to ensure that you're having, from the very start of the design of the clinical trial, it's being designed to have equitable enrollment in the study. It has lots of links to other information where you can get more information as you're designing your study. And it's really well done, and it's not that long, so it's really valuable, and I really encourage people to use it.
Now, we've been talking a lot and generating data about the issue of DEI in clinical trials, and so right now we're at the moment where we're all aware it's an issue. The movement is towards trying to improve on things, and now with the FDA putting out the guidance as well as this coming into the law, our hope is that with diversity action plans and more awareness and more conclusive steps being taken, is that we're going to move forward in a better direction. So there's a lot of hope. And the goal of this workshop was to bring together all the key stakeholders that play an important role in designing, conducting trials. So getting the industry, getting the academia, getting the regulatory bodies like FDA, and putting a conversation together was just that step in this direction.
The ASH annual meeting is the world's most comprehensive hematology event of the year. On Friday, prior to the official start of the meeting, researchers gathered for the scientific workshops, which are planned by members of the scientific community. These interactive workshops featured discussions of the latest developments in cutting-edge areas of hematology. Topics range from hematology and aging to diagnostic techniques in classical and malignant hematology.
The importance of this workshop was the idea to put together the diagnostic algorithm of immune cytopenias, from red blood cell disorders to immune thrombocytopenia and immune neutropenia. And we also managed to merge a workshop together with oncohematologists dealing with the diagnosis of oncohematologic disease by performing very sensitive and specific molecular testing.
So a lot of these conditions are predominantly clinically diagnosed, and it's important to have a validation of our diagnosis with more sophisticated testing. There is advances in diagnostic techniques, particularly in blood banking and in antibody detection in platelets as well as ITP, and it's helpful for clinicians as well as scientists to have a laboratory validation of these findings.
The Novartis-sponsored ASK2 Escalate study is currently enrolling in the United States. ASK2 Escalate is a phase 2 dose escalation trial of asciminib monotherapy for second and first line CML chronic phase. All patients will start treatment with asciminib 80 mg daily and can dose escalate if not meeting response milestones. The primary endpoint is major molecular response at 12 months in second line patients. Visit the Novartis booth 2429 for more information.
ASH is working to advance key legislation to improve health outcomes. ASH News TV's Rachel Kopchak is at the Grassroots Network lunch to learn more about ASH's advocacy priorities for 2024.
Joining me now is Dr. Jennifer Holter Chakrabarty, and she is the chair of the Committee on Government Affairs. Tell us a little bit about ASH's advocacy priorities for the upcoming year.
So I think just as every year, science is what motivates hematologists, and science is what cures patients with hematology issues and malignancies. And so one of our major priorities is making sure that we keep that science going. It is absolutely imperative that we have good funding for our NIH-funded scientists, and that funding is complete year to year, that we don't have these small funding bills. So one of our major issues is that we're going to try and increase NIH funding, but we're going to try and get to the point where we have a stable budget and we actually get that NIH funding at the beginning of the year and it lasts for an entire year, so we don't quit having monitoring of it. And then sickle cell has always been a huge issue. It's one of the most proud things I have for ASH. It was a disease that needed to have intense focus and nobody was doing it. And ASH said we'd do it. And so we've started the sickle cell data collection program, which the ladies today are going to talk about the impetus of getting data and how we take that data to make advocacy change. It was also the impetus for how that data collection system came to be in some ways. So we're trying to continue that CDC funding so that we can continue the data collection program. And then we're trying to also expand that to a comprehensive sickle cell disease system so that we can set up these centers of excellence and really prove what we can do. And then lastly, one of the pet projects that I have always had and many of ASH members have had is that we simply do not have good quality hospice care for individuals that have hematologic malignancies. You get acute leukemia, you go through all the treatment, you want to spend time at home afterwards, and you can't without getting transfusions, or you're fearful of doing so without getting transfusions. So we're trying to get a carve out for some of those blood transfusions so that you can get those during hospice so that we can enhance the type of care that you actually receive. So those are the major things we're doing this year. I think we will continue, as always, to listen to our members and find new advocacy points as we go along, because things happen all the time. Obviously, this year, right now, we know the Medicare payments reimbursement is an issue for our members, and so we're going to try and help with that as well, and advocate for getting paid for what we do so we can take care of patients appropriately.
Yes. And how can we mobilize this community of hematologists to just be that advocate as well? Because that's an important aspect of implementing all of this work you're doing.
So I think what everybody needs to realize is we all count. And we can all be listened to if we have focus, if we say the same thing in a unified voice. So we have action alerts. There will be one that will come out today that will look at NIH funding and that continuing funding that we are talking about. There'll be another one that will come out about the Medicare reimbursement rates later on this week on Sunday. But I think that if you can get involved in our ASH network, if you can be here at the Grassroots Network, come join your colleagues, listen to what the problems are, help be a voice for what we need to do, and then get involved in our action network.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We appreciate all of your hard work that you do both here at the annual meeting and throughout the year. So thank you.
Absolutely. This is the love of my work life. I love it. Thank you.
Thank you.
The Abstract Achievement Awards were presented at a special ceremony on Saturday at the Blood Journal studio. These awards provide monetary support to select hematologists in training with high-scoring abstracts to enable them to travel to the meeting. We spoke with some of this year's recipients on the impact this award and the opportunity to present their research at the annual meeting has had on their career.
Outstanding ceremony for the Distinguished Abstract Awards. It was a great pleasure to be here, and winning this prize means a lot because I'm putting a lot of efforts into this. The recent advancement in molecular hematology, so the definition of gene mutation, are really helping to move the field forward. Chronic myelomonocytic leukemia is a rare disease, cancer with dismal outcome, and refining all these techniques, implementing them in the clinical practice can really help these patients, and so I'm very happy that I can help moving the field forward.
As a graduate student, the path is very long, and sometimes it's pretty easy to lose sight of the goal, and to have your work honored in this way really kind of keeps that fire going.
Tibsovo, ivosidenib tablets, is a once-daily oral therapy for the treatment of adult patients with acute myeloid leukemia, or AML, who have a susceptible IDH1 mutation. Patients treated with Tibsovo have experienced symptoms of differentiation syndrome, which can be fatal. QTc interval prolongation and Guillain-Barré syndrome can also develop in patients treated with Tibsovo. Please review all important safety information below and see full prescribing information, including boxed warning for AML patients, at tibsovopro.com/AML. For newly diagnosed patients with AML who are ineligible for induction chemotherapy, Tibsovo delivers a laser-focused solution. Tibsovo plus azacitidine delivers 24 months median overall survival versus 7.9 months with azacitidine alone. That's a threefold improvement over azacitidine alone and a 56% reduction in the risk of death. Tibsovo, laser-focused on survival.
Another day of the ASH annual meeting and exposition comes to a close, but there is still so much more to come. Continue to tune into our coverage on ASH News TV for more highlights from our time in San Diego. We'll see you on the next episode.